Last week, we spoke with a group of parents to get their perspective on parenting during the pandemic and the prospect of soon being able to get very young children vaccinated.
Few of the daycare moms and I have made a joke about waiting in line for like a concert. Basically, who's bringing the tent?
Well, I mean, my son has had COVID. He's been through it, and it was pretty rough. I know what I felt like when I got the vaccine. For a 3-year-old to communicate what they really are feeling, and if there's a problem, can they actually do that? I don't think they can. That's part of the reason why we want to wait.
Cam, how about you? How have you fared and how have your children fared during this pandemic?
So my son's 13, so he started at a new school right when it started. I still think he's sort of playing catch up and trying to get back to some level of normalcy.
Did the vaccine make a tremendous difference in his life or in your psychology?
Absolutely, because you always want to do anything you possibly can to protect your child. And unfortunately, I lost my best friend who opted to not get vaccinated prior to my son being able to get vaccinated. So as soon as it was an option for him to be able to get the vaccine, he was 12 when he got it, there wasn't any hesitation on my part.
Alejandro, your children are a little bit older. What was your conversation about the need to get vaccinated or not?
My kids are my kids really are really prudent, verging on the hypochondriac. So they got vaccinated as soon as they were eligible. I didn't have to push them at all. If anything, they pushed me.
And I mean, how did that make you feel as a parent?
It made me feel safer. We were not, given their ages, I wasn't worried about them dying of COVID, but I was worried about them having the flu from hell and then having any long-term consequences of that flu from hell.
Do all of you and do all of your children wear masks? Raise your hand. And they all wear masks when they go to school. Are any of you, do any of you hope that they get to take off that mask soon, or is it just normal now?
My middle child is going to college, and they at colleges they really have a nasty mental health crisis. It's not made up, and the COVID restrictions have a lot to do with that. It's masking, the social distancing, the asking for the having to get tested twice a week, and so on and so forth. It's really taxing, and it's really affecting their social lives. It's driving some of them pretty crazy, I guess.
Allison, I want you to jump in here because I think you've got a pretty interesting point of view. You are actually a pediatrician. Are you concerned about development with young children, given all the restrictions we're living under? Do you think that's a valid worry from parents?
I do, especially for our teenage children. As far as the little ones go, I am not quite so concerned because these little ones are so resilient. So I think it's less of a concern than the big kids. But yeah, I think it's definitely an issue. I see it in my own daughter she's in first grade, and in kindergarten, she was wearing a mask all year and it wasn't an issue. And at the beginning of this year, they didn't have them wearing masks. And she was thrilled, of course. And then with the upsurge and the new variant, they had them return to masks. And she just cried. She was devastated. So it really brought it kind of in more perspective to me that, I mean, this is hard for them. It affects them so much more than we realize sometimes.
When you hear the term children are resilient, do you think that's a positive way of characterizing things, or does it anger you a little bit?
It's not that I don't think children are resilient. I just think sometimes there's such a focus on them being resilient and having grit that they don't get a chance to actually feel their emotions because they're too busy shoving them down to show grit and resilience. The very young, they don't have a lot of memories, but they do have, there are subconscious things that stick with them. They're going to need to feel their feelings, and we're going to need to give them the grace to do so.
That's a really, I think, important observation. Cam, what's your feeling on this?
We have a generation of youth, that are missing opportunities and experiences that they're never going to be able to have again.
Show of hands, who thinks that we can kind of make up for lost time? No one. Who thinks we can repair whatever impact there has been to our children? Caleb, you're hopeful here.
Yeah, I am, because with my with my 3-year-old, this is a new thing that none of us have ever had to go through, but I think this is just normative for them moving forward, so they won't know that it's not like the same as what we had.
Sydney, I know your children have experienced things with kind of a stop start. How has that impacted them?
They were 12 and 14. That's a really crucial time. So for my daughter, who is a little bit more quiet anyway, we had to make sure she came out of her room, and we could kind of see her closing down, tensing up, and so we could go into how can we help her mode. My son is a little bit more happy-go-lucky, and so he seemed to be taking everything in stride until it was clear he wasn't. Like, he was a 12-year-old who had like a 3-year-old meltdown one day. He just ran out of the house yelling, and it was we were worried.
And Cam, I know you had some difficulty seeing what the impact was of isolation on your son.
A couple months into it, he was just breaking down occasionally, and he finally wrote me a letter and said that he was concerned about when I wasn't going to be around, which was shocking. And because you see all this like death and gloom all around you. It's been much better now that he's back at school, but that first 6 to 9 months, it definitely affected him emotionally.
That must have been really hard to hear as a parent.
Oh, absolutely.
Do all of you feel like your emotional health has been impacted by COVID? Show of hands. All of you do. Do you think that impacts your ability to parent?
The CDC kept saying that's how you protect your child, is you make sure everybody around them is vaxxed and boosted, because neither of my kids' grandmothers will get vaccinated. So they haven't seen her since she was a year old. It was a hard conversation to have with my own mother, I must say. And then there came Omicron, and it didn't seem to matter that we were vaccinated and boosted. It was coming for you anyway. And so now that's part of the paranoia almost right now. Yes, I'm going to get Marcy vaccinated as soon as possible, but now I don't think of the vaccine as the way out anymore.
A painful conversation.